Going into John Wick Chapter 4, I expected a solid action movie, but one that, to be honest, would struggle to raise the bar after the insanity that had come before. But leaving the theatre, boy was I completely wrong. This was a high adrenaline installment that, in my opinion, set a new standard for the lengths that filmmakers and stunt performers could go to capture the best action filmmaking possible. For me, it's the best action movie since 2015's Mad Max Fury Road, telling its story and high-octane sequences through perfected visual cinematography, building to an ending subtext that John Wick fans have wanted to know the answer to for years since the series began. In this video essay, I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on why I believe John Wick Chapter 4 is an action masterpiece, discussing how particular scenes drive the storytelling through visual filmmaking. There will be brief spoilers in this video, so if you haven't seen the film yet, then I would recommend watching it before checking out my review. Before I get into it though, if you want to see more videos on upcoming theatrical releases like the latest John Wick film, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into my review for John Wick Chapter 4. There are moments, sequences, or even entire films in action cinema that you will remember forever. Whether it be John McClane surviving the events of that very first Die Hard feature, IMAX sequences in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, the redefining action of that very first Matrix film, even the practical and visually spectacular takes in Mad Max Fury Road, or the brutal insanity of fights in both the Raid films. There's so many examples that could join this list when it comes to action film history, but I think the recently released fourth chapter in the John Wick franchise does it all. Chad Stahelski's latest film starring Keanu Reeves is full of furious action and almost unstoppable feats in choreographed stunt work that it again brings up the argument surrounding a best stunt category at the Oscars. While John Wick 4 can feel like it's giving us a greatest hits of its very best action, in each sequence it finds a way to continuously up the intensity and stakes at play with extended scenes that top everything that's come before. If this is the last time that we see our favourite gung fu specialist in his Kevlar suit on the big screen, then he's gone out with one of the best entries in the franchise and one of the best films tied to action filmmaking that I've possibly seen. With the High Table looking to sort their Wick problem out once and for all, their leader, Bill Skarsgård's Marquis, thinks it's guaranteed that he will be able to take out John before the 3-hour runtime is up, as our favourite assassin is pushed to his physical limits and remains virtually friendless in his quest for both vengeance and freedom. Anyone he gets close to becomes marked for death, and with the increasing price put on his head, it seems like it's only a matter of time before John's rampage is ended, unlike the previous installments. But as the plot cleverly introduces, there's a way out of his troubles, and that involves some old tradition in the laws of the High Table. The old ways, as they are called in the film, is something that could either set him free or see him die trying, providing that he does make it through the hundreds of enemies that are placed in his way before the credits roll. Of course, this very plot connects to how the franchise and character began. John Wick was somewhat a relatable revenge thriller where a past assassin got out of the game because of love and ends up getting back involved when his puppy, a gift from his dead wife, is eventually killed. Now, by the time we've reached Chapter 4, the very thematics that this whole story have been built around, whether it be freedom, vengeance, or death, are answered in a globe-trotting blockbuster that has to outdo everything that came before it. And while Chapter 4 delivers on the high expectations set by the previous films, it also uses its runtime effectively to expand the series' unique universe of underground assassins, fascinating side stories, and well-designed locales. When it comes to what is most striking about John Wick 4, it's how emotionally engaging it is and how the excellently choreographed action sequences drive this story to its glorious end. In much blockbuster films we get today, we don't get the earned motivation for a protagonist, or why even the action itself has a central purpose. In the previous John Wicks, we were shown how deadly and even how rage-filled John had become, visualized as a destructive legend risen from the ground. We already knew that John Wick, or Baba Yaga, was a somewhat unstoppable force that seemed almost unkillable, even right from the more comedic myths like how he once killed 3 men in a bar with a pencil. And if we didn't believe that already, the series would constantly remind us, like in the many occasions where he survives almost fatal wounds, falls or collisions. And that makes us question, when will this ever end? Is this going to become as silly as an action franchise like, say, Fast and Furious, where they simply top the biggest action scenes and use even more CGI work to show that they are just going bigger for the sake of it? Or is it going to lead to something more meaningful in relation to John Wick's past and psyche? In my opinion, it absolutely did the latter, and the incredible action scenes and cinematography in Chapter 4 deliver on such a monumental scale. Dan Lawston's impeccable photography and Kevin Cavanagh's state-of-the-art production design is what really takes this entry to another level, giving us the prominent usage of neons and reflective visual mirrors to make us even more aware to the fact that John Wick, as a character, needs an answer sooner rather than later, whether that be freedom or death. The many action scenes, like the early horseback chase through the desert, the now rain-soaked nightclubs, or the absolutely astonishing final hour in Paris, show that the visual aesthetics of this franchise have been pushed to their absolute limits. Alongside that, Chapter 4 adopts more dance-like camera work and less frenetic editing cuts than we've seen in the previous films too. During many of these moments, whether it be John's initial fight with Donnie Yen's cane, or his physically exhausting battle in the rain with Scott Adkins' killer, we feel an exhaustion to the killing that we've become so used to seeing from Keanu Reeves' deadly assassin. Just when we think he's running out of steam, he again fully inhabits the Baba Yaga persona and kills or defeats yet another enemy put in front of him. But after all the relentless action that's thrown our way, it's in the final act where Stahelski and Reeves deliver their masterpiece of the action genre. Their final opera answers that previously mentioned question surrounding whether John will get freedom or die trying, and their statement is, why not both? It's a night of a million bullets and lots of death, sprawling from one landmark to another. We go from an unbelievable and breathy sounding traffic sequence, which is full of enemies being hit by cars, and a dog jumping through the chaos to assist our famous boogeyman. We then move to an abandoned building sequence where John has to fight off hundreds of goons using a dragon breath shotgun, captured superbly using the cinematography around and from above. It even makes room for a moment where John makes the choice to save Mr. Nobody's dog, bringing the series events and main character full circle. And we cap all of this off with an almost impossible final action scene up a famous staircase where John battles his physical and even mental capabilities, rising the many stairs, only to be thrown all the way back down. It turns out that while he goes for a lot of the runtime having no friends or those to help him, that the person he's meant to duel in the events that follow, and the character that's been hunting him down for a bounty, end up coming to his aid. The long sequence, mixed with music and sound from the other John Wick films, is a cultivating one that shows that the more Wick blasts his way through, the more he and the audience seem to feel that the answer to his fateful question is eventually coming. And we get that very answer in the film's final duel, where the future of John Wick is decided once and for all. He doesn't get either freedom or just death, he gets both. He allows himself to be shot and killed by Donnie Yen's cane, but then he also uses his reserved bullet to kill the Marquis, essentially finishing finishing what he started. In the end, he got freedom through death and ended up somewhere between heaven and hell. As Winston and the Bowery King debate that very question once Wick has been buried, it's almost fitting that the final shot of Wick before his death is one where he sits bleeding out on the steps halfway between the church, symbolised as heaven, and the many goons he'd killed below, symbolised as hell. It's almost a visual reference to the two parts of John Wick's life, one being the death and destruction as a hitman, and the other being the religious love that he had for his wife. So John Wick essentially could only get freedom by allowing himself to die, and none of the enemies that were put in front of him could kill him themselves. That's the point to all of these never-ending action sequences, and it's through both the visual imagery and aesthetics on display that we get an action story paid off in all the right ways. Fighting against all of these odds also makes Wick much more endearing. The no-nonsense part of Keanu's performance is used to show us just how much he internally struggles. Each killing and each big decision throughout this series has come at a big cost to his integrity. The higher he rises through the temple that is the High Table, the more the villains he encounters represent the High Table's next layer of capitalism. Bill Skarsgård's Marquis is the epitome of great wealth, fashion and arrogance, and while we always question how far John has gone, the table's system is so unforgiving in the realization that no matter who Wick kills, someone will always continue that never-ending cycle. So it has to be said that with Chapter 4 bringing a sense of intimacy to John's bloodshed, it adds an essential layer to the storytelling, and the accompanied action sequences do a fantastic job of showing us that. There are consequences to the very nature of these assassins, and it's everyone in his world that's affected. Whether it's John and his story, the High Table, Winston and the potential loss of the Continental and his friend, Akira with her father, Kane with his daughter, or even the Ruska Roma with their killed leader. The film sequences have consequences, and the performances bring this to life in such a detailed way that I truly wasn't expecting. And alongside the individual effect of this film's journey, it also gives us hope that the future of this franchise as a whole is also very bright too. One potential spin-off following John Wick 4's post-credit scene is the idea that Donnie Yen's Kane will try to survive an assassination attempt from Akira, whose father was killed by him earlier on in the film. Another is Chapter 4's Mr. Nobody, who clearly is on a quest to clear his financial problems. And then there's Wick's Belarusian family, who definitely seem to have more story potential in there too. While we don't know if any of these characters will have their own spin-offs yet, the post-credit scene and their great introductions in Chapter 4 tease that there's much more to come in John Wick's world, regardless of the main character being killed off. And we already know that the John Wick franchise has a bright near future ahead of it too, with already announced projects coming this year. Peacock will release the prequel series The Continental, which will follow a young Winston during his rise in a 1970s New York. And there's also the upcoming spin-off film Ballerina, which follows female assassin Rooney, played by Ana de Armas, as she seeks vengeance on behalf of her family. So as a whole, it's a world full of rich continentals and different characters, and this film really nails the idea that you can create ambitious stories and figures around your initial creation. And while all of this is great in a theatrical medium full of spin-offs, sequels and universes, John Wick Chapter 4 fully understands that you have to deliver on the story and spectacle of one before expanding beyond that. But they were my thoughts on John Wick Chapter 4. At nearly 3 hours in length, the fourth film in the John Wick saga does at times have scenes that could have been shortened, mainly in some of the dialogue scenes where characters explain things that the audience already knew. But that's a minor problem when everything else is handled so appropriately. With Chapter 4 returning to the more emotional beats that the foundation of the first film laid, everything has now come full circle. Action cinema has never looked as good as it does under the helm of director Chad Stahelski, and every frame creatively innovates and goes the extra mile in capturing this tale. Whether it's the bird's eye view or other camera angles to follow the action, choreographed and immersive scenes that puts us shots in the often wary boots of John Wick, or sublime aesthetics that sink us into new parts of this world, like with the Osaka Continental. For me, the efforts undertaken put this film in the same league as, say, Fury Road, or even the Mission Impossible films, and overall, it's a fantastic tribute to action cinema, raising the bar for how a film like this can both look and sound on the big screen. I'm giving John Wick Chapter 4 a rating of 9 out of 10. But to those who have seen the latest movie in the John Wick franchise, do you agree that it's a masterpiece of action cinema? And when it comes to looking forward, what projects or spin-offs would you like to see come to life? Let me know down below in the comment section. For more videos and reviews surrounding the latest theatrical releases, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, rating, and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.